My respects to the panel of judges, Presiding Judge Ros Pisith, Judge Im Vannak, Judge Soeung Chariya, acting in your respective role, to Deputy Prosecutor Seng Heang and Deputy Prosecutor Seng Heang, who is extremely active for being such a young man, if I am to judge by the countless court warrants and summonses loudly bearing your name issued against political activists and supporters. Instead of you prosecuting us, we should be prosecuting you for the grave injustices and untold misery you have inflicted against innocent people. The detainees and their wives, husbands, sons, and daughters, whose lives and livelihoods are greatly disrupted. In presiding over this sham trial, a legal drama scripted by politicians, you are not only perpetrating a bitter injustice on those of us illegally charged, but you are also taking away valuable court resources from genuine complainants and plaintiffs and crowding jail cells, which are already filled beyond their maximum capacity. Despite these injustices perpetrated against me and others, as a Christian, I forgive you. I pray God may forgive you as well. My respects to the clerks, particularly D. Lila, who had been my point of contact since the November 26, 2020 hearing, and who had agreed to keep me informed of the next hearing after the February 25, 2021 hearing was postponed due to a COVID community outbreak. However, it was not Clerk D. Lila, it was Facebook and this regime's mouthpiece, Fresh News, that I learned of today's hearing on November 19, and about a week later, was hand-delivered a redo summons by 3 police officers to my rental home in Kien Swai. My respects to the court-appointed lawyers, also willing actors in this political theater. My respects to those wrongly charged with me. All 139 of you are my heroes. And to the lawyers genuinely defending your interests. My respects to the diplomats, to UN officials, journalists, and human rights defenders. Thank you for attending this political theater to help cast light on the darkness. And especially today, my respects to a very special guest, Mr. Jared Genzer, a great friend from law school some 20 plus years ago, who traveled all the way from Washington, D.C. to be here. Normally, he is my pro bono and famous international counsel. But on this visit at this time, he is just a dear friend, lending support to his friend in need, as he is not registered to practice law in Cambodia and came as a tourist. Also, my deepest appreciation, for I know what a great sacrifice it is for you, Jared, to make this very long trip during a very, very busy time of year and in this very fraught political context. At the start, I would like to note for the record the vicious assault and detention of co-defendant Kat Kompir's autistic teenage son, Sovanchai, as well as the violence against and the threats, harassment, and intimidation of relatives and friends of other political detainees, some recently released with conditions, including the recent barbaric hacking to death of Sin Kun. I would like to note the fear and rumors due to suspension of family visits and suppression of information of COVID-19 outbreaks in the extremely overcrowded prisons, impacting on the health particularly of political prisoners. I would like to note the political use of COVID-19. 1. To threaten public interest in these mass trials, particularly the timing of outbreak announcements in November 2020 and in February 2021, accompanied by the constant threats of calling for a state of emergency. 2. The holding of non-public hearings during curfews and lockdowns. For example, the sentencing of co-defendant CNRP leaders in absentia because they were prevented from entering Cambodia, as they are again prevented from attending today's mass trial hearing of 42 defendants, each given 20 to 25-year prison term, as well as the sentencing of youth environmentalists. And 3, the disproportionate, extreme, excessive, complete shutdown of the whole of Phnom Penh and nearby the Khmal, as they relate to these ongoing mass trials for treason and incitement. And I would like to note for the record the composition and timing of today's mass trial hearing. Regarding composition, we were told that the 2 cases of treason and incitement involving 139 charged individuals have been split into smaller hearings of several individuals to a dozen or so at a time. I was on a list of 17 names summoned to appear for the February 25, 2021 hearing before it was postponed only several days prior because a few Chinese women visitors broke quarantine, triggering the community outbreak. Regarding timing, the prosecution office signed off on this redo summons for me on November 12, immediately on the heel of the sanctions the United States slapped on 2 high-level regime officials on November 10. Additionally, there has been a flurry of extrajudicial activities against CNRP officials and supporters who are UN-recognized refugees and migrant workers in Thailand, capped off with the high-profile, barbaric chopping up of CNRP activist Sin Kun.